I'll build you a temple. The Juhu story. So we just finished a very joyful section of Sorab becoming initiated devotee the next day after he met Prabhupada, and beginning the plan for designing the Juhu temple. And Prabhupada liked his work. Sorab sketched and drew for almost a year, and then put together a prospectus with Vishankha, who was working with him and taking photographs. There was a pause in his work. Then he would come with me to promote the life membership program. I couldn't understand the program, he recalled. Giriraj would sit there and then tell all sorts of stories and impress them. I didn't, that's not where I finished. Okay, I'm sorry. I'm going back halfway down the page 56. Prabhupada left Bombay and Giriraj cried. A month after leaving Bombay, Prabhupada wrote to Chaivana and me with a photo of an artist's sketch of a skyscraper, a proposal for an ISKCON world headquarters in Los Angeles. Simply add Govindaji's temple as you and Saurabh have drawn it, he wrote, and add into it this skyscraper in the enclosed photo. Saurabh sketched and drew for almost a year and then put together perspectives with Vishaka, etc. I couldn't understand that program, he recalled. Giriraj would sit there and tell them all sorts of stories and impress them, and those people were rich, but they wouldn't really listen. They would just look away or be busy on the phone, or somebody else would come in. But Giriraj had the patience to just sit there and sit there and sit there until he got somebody to become a member. During Srila Prabhupada's first stay at the Hare Krishna land, one of his disciples complained to him that the tenants' children were running around making noise and asked, how could we keep them quiet? That is not possible, Prabhupada replied, but you can engage their propensities in Krishna consciousness in Kirtan. And that was the beginning of the Gurukula, the children's classes at Hare Krishna land. With his youthful enthusiasm and charismatic charm, Madhu Devisa was the natural leader for the program. Quote, I was living upstairs on the roof, he later recalled. Prabhupada had said, yes, that is very good. Live up on the roof. So I kept all my clothes and books and things in a metal trunk with a lock, and I set up a piece of cloth for shade. I soon made friends with the... Is that an Indian name? That's an Indian name? Kerala name, warriors. Is that how you pronounce it? Same pronunciation. Warriors, okay. Warriors. Warriors. Okay. One morning when I was doing Tulsi Arti, dancing around, the children came up on the roof. I asked them if they knew Tulsi, but they didn't. They were real Bombay Hindus. They didn't know much. So I explained how we worship Tulsi, and I showed them how to offer obeisances and dance around Tulsi and everything. I gave them pieces of paper with the prayers to read. They learned the words and offered the prayers, and gradually the whole family became devotees. We actually started a little training program there. The children would come up after school, and I taught them prayers and how to do Tulsi Arti, and we had a little Bhagavad Gita class. They were the first family on Hare Krishna land. The mother and the kids, the girls and her two older brothers, all became devotees just from coming up on the roof. And after them, children from the other buildings on the land also started coming on a regular basis. At the age of 6, Smriti, or quote, baby warrior, was the youngest. Quote, she remembered years later, Madhavisa Swami, Gargamuni Swami, and Brahmananda Swami were our Gurukul teachers. Wow. The three of them did it. And it was so much fun. We used to do all kinds of things, little projects, learning slokas, chanting, putting on dances for Srila Prabhupada when he came. My brothers and I used to go. Of course, they were older than me, so they were quicker in learning the slokas. I was slow. The system was that if you learned the Ishopanishad, you'd get a plate of the deity's Mahaprasad. It took me a long time to get that. Madhudvisa Maharaj and others were living on the rooftop. At night, he would carry a bucket of water to the roof and he would bathe there. In the early morning, we would look up, and from where we were, all we could see were these white, soapy, lathered heads. It was austere, but it was a lot of fun. Paragraph. Srila Prabhupada considered that the Gurukul program important, and before he left Bombay, he told us that we should develop it. As it was, many of the children would attend the evening program in the Pandal with their parents, and some would attend Mangal Arti. Prabhupada even had us schedule Mangal Arti a little later than in our other temples to make it easier for the neighbors to attend. He said that the whole area surrounding Hare Krishna land was, quote, a pious quarter, unquote, and that he wanted us to do whatever we could to maintain a school for the local children. The children learned our regular principles and how to offer food to Krishna, and at home, if their parents prepared any kind of the forbidden items, some of the children would ask why and tell them it was not good. Some parents were embarrassed by this, however, and it became a source of tension with the tenants. Paragraph. Sumati Mararji, Srila Prabhupada's old friend and the head of the Scindia Steam Navigation Company, who had contributed funds for the printing of Prabhupada's Srimad Bhagavatam in India and later had given him free passage to America on one of her ships, and who lived nearby, was running her own school not far from us. But she was not attracting a sufficient number of students, so she sent a representative from her school to ask if they could distribute circulars to friends and visitors at our pandal and invite me, Giriraj, to meet with her to discuss various matters. I agreed to meet her and I wrote Srila Prabhupada about a proposal. Paragraph. But Prabhupada envisioned establishing our own proper Krishna conscious school. A week later, he wrote me from Sydney, quote, as soon as possible, we should open our own school and teach children Krishna consciousness through English medium. That is one of our programs. Our school will not be government recognized because we cannot follow the government syllabus. We want to teach only Krishna consciousness. I know many parents are eager to educate their wards through English medium. If we can introduce the system, our girl disciples may be engaged for teaching them, a little English grammar, reading and writing, geography, arithmetic, history, Sanskrit, but all of them should be Krishna conscious. That is the Bhagavat program. Komara Acharit Pragyo Dharman Bhagavataniha. I replied, Madhuvisa Swami and Gargamuni Swami have been leading classes for children from 5 p.m. to 6:30 p.m. daily. About 50 to 100 children come daily to learn prayers, kirtan, japa, and philosophy. They can be seen with tilak neck beads and their hands in their bead bags. not only in class, but also outside, unquote. I am very much pleased about the children's classes, Prabhupada wrote back. These are very, very important programs, so let it go on nicely, even if Madhvisa leaves there, unquote. He wrote to Gargamuni, in the absence of Madhvisa, you take charge of the school. And 10 days later, he wrote to Gargamuni, if you leave Bombay, make sure the school is in very capable hands, such as yours, because this program is very, very important. Not that you shall go away and things will stop. Eventually, Sumati Morarji considered turning her school over to us, and I wrote Srila Prabhupada, quote, Srimati Morarji wants to turn her school over to us when our building is ready, semicolon. She will give us whatever funds, paraphernalia, and students she has. She has also volunteered to have the children's meals cooked in her school and sent to us for offering to Radha and Krishna and then distributing. Meanwhile, she invited us to lead her present students in kirtan and other programs in her building. The following month, on July 11th, Sumati Morarji met Srila Prabhupada in London. She had been used to dealing with Shamsundar, who then was serving as Prabhupada's secretary, not with me, but Srila Prabhupada steered her in my direction. Quote, her father is a very rich man, Prabhupada said. Is he? She replied. That's Giriraj's father. Is he? She replied. His father is a very big lawyer, and mother and father both came to me in Calcutta. His mother, after all, a mother, was crying, give me back my boy. So I replied, you can take away your boy. So anyway, they are very good gentlemen, and he's a graduate in psychology. He's learned. So Giriraj said, no, he's a very nice man. I asked him just now, I'm running a school. I said, you come and give lecture, tell some stories to the children. No, excuse me, that's her. That's Sumati Morarji. No, he's a very nice man. I asked him just now, I'm running a school. I said, you come and give lecture, tell some stories to the children. Okay. The next day, Srila Prabhupada wrote me, Sumati Morarji wants us to come to her school and give classes in Krishna consciousness. So you go there with others as often as possible and give instruction to the children. Bring them to our temple, distribute prasadam like that. More and more, she'll become favorably disposed as she sees that we are performing the best welfare activity. Kindly inform me how these matters are making progress. I replied immediately, quote, we have already been going to Sumati Morarji's school as she wants the students and their parents to gradually accept being taught by us. Naturally, the students prefer our methods to the ordinary ones, so they are very responsive. Paragraph. Despite his busy schedule and other priorities and important projects, Prabhupada was so enthusiastic to help the children and encourage his old friend and benefactor, Sumati Morarji, that he too wrote back immediately on July 30th, quote, so far as the school of Sumati Morarji make the children into Vaishnavas through English medium of learning. We are not going to abide by the government schedule. They should be taught our books as soon as they can read and write. The idea is that those who will later on accept service or outside employment, they cannot be accepted by us for schooling. We cannot help them. They must be the sons of rich and important men who will not be taking education simply to use it for eating and sleeping. They should be taught just to do like the elders, that is, rise early, cleanse, attend Mongol Arti, read our literatures, chant, go for Sankirtan like that. And besides that, a little ABC, mathematics, geography, and history, that's all. And teach the small children to play Krishna games. One child is a cow, another is a cowherd boy. They go to the forest. There are demons there. Krishna kills the demons, like that. In this way, let the children play Krishna games, then attend Arti, then learn some ABC, then play some more, have kirtan, a little ABC, and by keeping them always diversified, they shall not lose interest and will keep their attention always focused around Krishna, unquote. Prabhupada was not only explaining how to engage the children in Somati's school nearby, he was telling us in general how to engage all children in learning Krishna consciousness. Paragraph. In our glossary brochure, we advertised a Gurukul as part of the Juhu project. The section began with two quotations from Bhagavad Gita 5:16 and 9:2. Quote, when one is enlightened with the knowledge by which ignorance is destroyed, then his knowledge reveals everything as the sun lights up the daytime. This knowledge is the king of education, the most secret of all secrets. It is the purest knowledge, and because it gives direct perception of the self by realization, it is everlasting and joyfully performed, unquote. It continued. People of all castes and creeds are welcome to participate in ISKCON's Gurukul school. They will get a complete education in English medium on various subjects, and at the same time be trained as men of character and good qualities who are equipped to deal with the material world and at the same time be versed in the science of God, unquote. And it highlighted the classes that were already being taught with two photos of the children with their teacher, Gargamuni. I can't imagine him as a children's school teacher. Quote, even as the construction is going on, the brochure read, young girls and boys are eagerly attending daily classes in our temporary quarters, and some have become knowledgeable Vaishnavas overnight, as tilak and japa beads now pervade the neighboring communities. And at school time, singing and dancing fills the air as the neophyte devotees circumambulate Srimati Tulsi Devi and then sit down to become absorbed in hearing about Govinda's unique pastimes and playful activities with Nanda, Yashoda, Nanda Maharaj, and his multitude of friends and enemies in Vrindavan, unquote. Then there's a break. From one perspective, the history of the Juhu project can be viewed as the story of Srila Prabhupada's personal service to Sri Sri Radha Rasa Bihari. My dear sir, he told Sri Rasa Bihari, and then both, you just stand there and I will build you a temple, unquote. Yet at the same time, as he was serving their lordships, he was also training us, his disciples, in the process of deity worship. Paragraph. In Calcutta, he had raised the question, what is the duty of the spiritual master and what is the duty of the disciple? Then he had given the answer. The duty of the spiritual master is to serve Krishna, and the duty of the disciple is to assist the spiritual master. He had given the example that it was his duty to see that the temple floor was clean, and so the disciple washing the floor could think, it is my spiritual master's duty to keep the floor clean, and I'm assisting him by cleaning it. In the 8 stanzas Glorifying the spiritual master, Srila Vishwanath Chakrabarti Thakur states, Shri Vigrahara Dannichanana Shringara Tan Mandiramarjanado Yuktasya Bhaktam Shaniyanjatopi Vande Guroshi Charanaravinda. Translation: the spiritual master is always engaged in the temple worship of Sri Radha and Krishna. He also engages his disciples in such worship. They dress the deities in beautiful clothes and ornaments, clean the temple, and perform other simple worship of the Lord. I offer my respectful obeisances at the lotus feet, such as spiritual master. Srila Prabhupada explains, quote, Shri Vigraha is the archa, or suitable worshipable form of the Lord, and the disciple should be engaged in worshiping the deity by shringara, proper decoration and dressing, as also by mandira marjana, the matter of cleansing the temple. The spiritual master teaches the neophyte devotee all these kindly and personally to help him gradually in the realization of the transcendental name, quality, form, etc. of the Lord. Bhagavatam purport. So, when we, his disciples, made mistakes in our service to the deities, he corrected us. Because of our material conditioning and atheistic tendencies, we may tend to neglect the deity, to think the deity is merely a stone or metal statue, not the Supreme Personality Godhead. This tendency is acknowledged and criticized in Shastras. Long Sanskrit verse, Padma Purana. One who thinks the deity in the temple to be made of wood or stone, who thinks the spiritual master in the disciplic succession as an ordinary man who thinks the Vaishnava in the Achyuta Gotra to belong to a certain caste or creed, and or who thinks of the Charnamrita or Ganges water as ordinary water, is taken to be a resident of hell. Padma Purana. Done in the proper mood, with faith and veneration, Sri Murtira Shraddhaya Sevana. Worshipping the deity is one of the 5 most potent processes of devotional service, as stated by Srila Rupa Goswami's Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. Shraddha Visheshata Priti Shri Murtir Angri Sevane. With love and full faith, one should worship the lotus feet of the deity. But if we mistake the deity for a stone, metal, or wood statue, or idol, we are doomed. Referring to the deity of Krishna, Srila Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami, the author of Chaitanya Charitamrita, states, Sakshat Vrajendra Sutta Ihe Nahi An Yaba Agye Kare Tanre Pratima Hena Gyan. Without a doubt, he is directly the son of the king of Braj. Only a fool considers him a statue. Another verse. For that offense he cannot be liberated. Next verse. He cannot be liberated. Rather, he will fall into a terrible hellish condition. What more should I say? Commenting on this verse, Srila Prabhupada states, quote, those who are actually very serious about devotional service do not differentiate between the form of the Lord made of clay, metal, stone, and wood, and the original form of the Lord. The statue of Lord Krishna and Krishna himself, the Supreme Personality Godhead, are not different because the Lord is absolute. Even if one has not developed his consciousness, one should accept it theoretically from the instructions of the spiritual master and should worship the Archa Murti, or form of the Lord in the temple as not different from the Lord, unquote. And thus he kindly trained us in the course of and as part of his service to the deities. To accommodate the deities without the large hired pandal, Narayan and his wife, Dina Dayadri, constructed a small and simple yet festive pandal-like structure. He went to Bhubaneswar and bought bolts of red and yellow cloth, and she sewed it with her special sewing machine from America. He had observed that when Indians built a pandal, they dug holes, put in bamboo poles, and repacked the dirt around them. Then they built a framework, and over that they laid the covering of interlocking pieces laced together. One could make a pandal with just a small single, it's just a single piece, or it could be hundreds of yards long. The bamboo was usually covered with striped cloth sleeves, but we didn't have any way to make them, so our bamboo was just bare. With help from a couple of devotees, Nararayan dropped in the poles, packed in the dirt, and put it all together with his own hands. We had almost no money, so there was no hired labor, semicolon. The devotees built the whole thing themselves, and on a wood plank platform were the deities. To protect the deities and their paraphernalia, a devotee stood guard all night. But one night in April, the devotee on duty fell asleep, and some thieves slipped under the canvas and stole the deity's crowns and flute. There was no door. The pandal was really just a tent, so the robbers had just walked in, stepped over the sleeping brahmachari, taken the flute and crowns, and left. Ooh, when Prabhupada heard about the incident, he wrote me, I have got some reports that the deities in Bombay are being much neglected. This is most abominable affair. Radha and Krishna should never be neglected or left unprotected. So I'm wondering what you have done to rectify the situation. I have heard that Madhudvisa intervened to get the deities better place, so he has done nicely. My mind was reeling. I was shaken to the core that Prabhupada had criticized me so severely, saying that deities were neglected and calling the situation abominable. Still, I tried to maintain my spirit and formulate a proper reply. Quote, you are so merciful to take the time to chastise this useless soul, I wrote. My sluggishness and thoughtlessness are very shameful, and worst of all, before receiving your letter, I was so unconscious of them. By your absolute mercy, but your absolute mercy is such that your chastisement is as good as your blessings. So I pray that my determination and enthusiasm shall not be shaken in trying to follow your instructions. So far as the deities are concerned, from what I heard from Madhudvisa Maharaj, at the time of shifting the deities, the finishing touches on Narayan's pandal had not been completed. Plus, the pandal throne itself was not very pucka. But now, highly decorative cloth has been put on the sides of the deity's house, and for their protection, we've had all-day watch by devotees and 3 men sleeping around the deity at night. Soon, the new structure should be up, and until then, we shall have all-night awake watch for the deities beginning tonight. The deity room in the Khandelwal structure will be paka brick and sheets with locking door. Right now there is problem of dust dirtying the deity house because the sides are open to wind. But the pujaris are very devoted, and in addition to being to big sewing work, I've given a list of prospective donors for deity things to one of our ladies. Unquote. Parentheses. The Khandelwal structure was to be constructed with Khandelwal steel tubes, manufactured by a dear friend and supporter, the pious and prominent industrialist Bihari Lal Khandelwal. Close parentheses. Paragraph. Prabhupada replied later that month, I'm glad to see that the programs are going on nicely, especially that the deities are being cared for again properly. Now you give our ladies full facilities and help them by giving them money and other things wherever required by them so that our deity program will not be lacking, unquote. I wrote back, the deity program is expanding and nearly every day a new item appears on the altar. The deity's lotus has returned, dipped in silver, and the girls have arranged to purchase marble for the altar. Madri Dasi and others have already got 3 nice donations for their lordships. When the deities are moved into their new home, we will feel very relieved and encouraged, unquote. And a week later, I added, I think when Radha and Krishna move into their new house, nobody will be able to resist them. Along with the external arrangements, we were also working on our consciousness. Quote, we are eagerly awaiting the completion of their new home, I wrote, and meanwhile are trying to instill in the devotees more awareness of the deities, meaning Radha and Krishna, the object of all of our service and love, themselves, in fact. Paragraph. Worshipping the deities in the pandal was difficult. Narayani remembered. Sometimes I would help with the deity worship, and it was very austere because the deities were in a tent in an open field, and there are big, huge winds. I would try to do arti, and the ghee wicks were always blowing out. It was hard to get through offering the lamp to all the deities without having to light the ghee wicks at least 5 or 6 times. Sometimes the whole pandal swayed in the wind. Once, when Harikesh was alone watching the deities, a strong gust blew the curtains into the ghee lamp, and the curtains, which were synthetic and highly flammable, caught fire. But it just so happened that Harikesh had been a New York fireman for 5 years, and he jumped up and ripped down the burning curtains and threw them on the ground. For the monsoon season, we moved the deities into a room we made for them in the hut, with curtains opening into a small indoor pandal that served as our temple hall. Oh, it's crazy. Boy. I wrote Srila Prabhupada, quote, we had an ecstatic kirtan procession with the blowing of conch shells and throwing of flowers and grains, along with rose water for the lordships to move them from their temporary pandal indoors. But with the crumbling floor and the rats and the mosquitoes and other bugs, serving them in the hut was also challenging and austere. Once, when rain came through the roof, Harikesh had to hold his raincoat over the deities to protect them. So having a proper, quote, semi-permanent, unquote, place for the deities was most essential. Quote, we often hear of devotees performing austerities for the sake of deities, Tamal Krishna said. But on Hare Krishna land, the deities performed austerities for the sake of the devotees, unquote. And years later, Narayani made the same point. Radha Rasabihari performed more austerities than we did. It was like having the general out there on the battlefield. Krishna himself was there with us to encourage us. He had to suffer the same as we did. That's how you get encouragement, when the leaders stay there with you, doing everything you do. Prabhupada was like that too. Oh, poor Radha Bihari. When you see them now, you don't think of that history. Oh, boy. Srila Prabhupada encouraged me to proceed with the deity program. But he also cautioned me to be careful. If you have crowns dipped in gold for the Bombay deities, he wrote me, you must keep them very carefully. I understand that some time ago one crown was stolen from Krishna's head, despite the presence of one brahmachari who was sleeping there and did not even hear the thief coming. So we must take very great precaution to always protect the deities from all kinds of danger. A couple of weeks later, he added, you should purchase one iron safe and keep the deities' jewelry and any valuables in that, or an iron closet, a little heavier, and you may keep either in my room or in some special room. It wasn't for another week until July 14th that I could finally write Prabhupada, quote, the Kandel wall structure is finished, and we are soon expecting the permits for the deity's house to be built attached to the Kandel wall. Behind the deity room shall be the pujari's room, where we shall keep the deity's heavy iron closet come safe, which we purchased yesterday. Within a month, the deity's house should be ready. At that time, we shall move the deities in a big celebration with publicity, celebrities, and feasting. Paragraph. While we were struggling in the hut, Prabhupada was envisioning a grand future for deity worship at Hare Krishna land, in which we served Radha and Krishna with sincere and focused attention, thus attracting large numbers of people to their lotus feet. Quote, the deity program must be improved very gorgeously, he wrote. Flower garlands should be expanded, and all expenditures for the deities must be expanded without any miserly contemplation. Our temple should be so gorgeously decorated that we shall excel all Bombay temples. This is my idea. Try to fulfill it. When they hear that we decorate our deities so gorgeously, people will throng, especially on festival days like Janmashtami, Julan Yatra, etc. So, 4 or 5 devotees should always be engaged in deity worship. If we make our deity worship program extremely opulent and gorgeous, he had begun, and if all the devotees are always attending arti and holding kirtan in front of the deities, that will be the best program for attracting the Indian people to Krishna consciousness movement. So, you try to give the pujaris all assistance to improve the standard of deity worship and always render Radha and Krishna the most sincere attention. Break. Shortly after the Palm Dal program on the land and Prabhupada's departure to Australia, a young man came looking for me in the hut. He presented me a typed letter addressed to the president of ISKCON Bombay. Quote, I have attended almost all the days of your dazzling display of arti ceremonies, pravachan, kirtans, and transcendental dramas. It is all attractive and all effective, which has power to cleanse the hearts of the patitam, or fallen, and remove all the dust accumulated for years together. It's a long letter. Your wonderful movement, Hare Krishna movement, is meant for purification of hearts and leading the inhabitants of this planet toward the fulfillment of the goal of human life, i.e., back to their natural home, back to Godhead, back to Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. I wish to be a pure devotee of Krishna and develop my dormant love for him. I want to be Krishna's servant because a valid life is a life of loving service to Krishna and engaged 24 hours a day in his devotional service. But in this troubled age of Kali, it is impossible to be pure devotee by living in association with worldly godless people, non-devotees, people who are interested in extracting happiness from matter, which is nothing but impossible. It is simply due to ignorance that they are missing the center of seeking pleasure, Krishna. In Bombay, Hare Krishna land is the only place where the predominance of the mode of goodness is very easily felt. Of course, it is natural because it is Hare Krishna land. Krishna, the reservoir of pleasure, personally resides in his most dear servants, the devotees, who are non different from himself. And the land is just an external manifestation of Vaikuntha Dham, the kingdom of God. I wish to join you and make my life sublime. I know your four things, which you abstain from, he names them, and no gambling. Nowadays, I'm chanting the Maha Mantra, gives the mantra. So I want to know the pre-qualifications and procedure, how you make a new devotee, and how he can get admission into your ashram. I expect admission at the earliest moment because, as you know, the moment which is not used in Krishna consciousness is a mere wastage of so valuable lifetime. Excuse me if, while reading such material words, it has created disturbance in your mind. Thanking you, Hare Krishna, yours sincerely, Patil R.B. I was delighted by what I read, perceiving how genuine, how humble and gentle and submissive the man was. I waved the letter above my head, announcing, "Hey, we've got a new bhakta," and embraced him. The title RB stood for Raghunath Bhagavan. He had attended a Pandal program at Cross Maidan, and our most recent one at Hare Krishna Land. In fact, he had taken many of the phrases in his letter from our publicity for the programs. Bhakta Raghunath took naturally to the lifestyle of the devotees. As he later recalled, I had a new home, a new uniform, new associates, a new program. Almost everything was new to me. Nonetheless, I immediately embraced all of it and liked it. Although the devotees were mostly foreigners, I felt completely at home. I was determined to make this my life's commitment. Raghunath had been a chemistry student at Kirti College in Dadar, Bombay, rooming with another young man from his village of Aravade in South Maharashtra. A year earlier, he had tried to join Vinoba Bhave's ashram, but he had never made it. His family had been aware of his inclination to join a spiritual community, so they had asked the young village men to keep an eye on him. During the Pandal program, Raghunath had commuted between Dadar and Juhu, and his roommates hadn't noticed anything different, but eventually, when he hadn't come back after visiting the temple, they had looked for clues, found a handbill with our address, and alerted his family. Showdown, sounds like. A week after Raghunath arrived, his older brother, with one of his previous roommates, came looking for him. His brother wanted him to visit the family, especially for the sake of their mother. If Raghunath didn't go, he said, she might die. He assured Raghunath and us that the family would have no objection to Raghunath's returning after the visit. I was apprehensive. I suspected that Raghunath's family would try to keep him there, keep him with them, and I wasn't sure how he would respond. Still, seeing Raghunath's sincerity and also his respect for his older brother and concern for his mother, I gave him permission to go for 1 week. Several days passed, then several weeks, and when Raghunath still hadn't returned, my anxiety peaked. Finally, after a month, he came back, and we were jubilant. Many Indian devotees had come and gone, promising to return, but hardly any had actually come back, as family attachments in India were very strong. When we asked Raghunath what had happened, he explained, after I arrived in my village, people began saying that I used to be such a nice boy. Now something had gone wrong with me. I was wearing a dhoti and kurta, chanting Hare Krishna and avoiding association with non-devotees, which the village considered strange and abnormal. My parents tried everything in their power to dissuade me from returning to the devotees. They even went to astrologers to learn some way to, quote, cure me or find out how long I would continue living this, quote, strange type of life. They were really concerned. More than a week passed, yet no plans had been made for my return to the devotees. As per the original agreement with my brother, my parents kept telling me that some relative or other still had to come to see me and that it wouldn't be proper for me to leave without meeting him. My family planned to enlist the relatives to talk to me out of becoming a sadhu. My parents tried everything on me, but my mind was fixed on going back to the devotees. When my family realized I wouldn't give up the life I had embraced, they came up with a proposal that I could continue the life of a sadhu, but do it here in our village. They promised to build a small temple where I could do my devotional practices. I rejected this idea too, however, because I wanted to associate with the devotees. There was no question of leading a spiritual life without proper association, without the association of devotees who are practicing Krishna consciousness full time. I didn't want to be just another bogus sadhu. India has already overcrowded and overburdened with them. I wanted to engage in the service of Krishna in the Hare Krishna movement. I had sold my heart to Srila Prabhupada and Lord Krishna. Srila Prabhupada had already given me my life's mission. So finally, my family accepted the inevitable. Raghunath confided that since he had stayed in the village for such a long time, he wasn't sure how I and the other devotees would respond to his return. So he was happily surprised to find himself so welcome as before. Quote, by the causeless mercy of Srila Prabhupada, my spiritual master, Lord Krishna, Supreme Personality Godhead, he declared, my return to the devotees became possible. ISKCON was the first institution I ever joined, he reflected years later, and Srila Prabhupada was the first and last spiritual master I accepted. And having joined ISKCON, the thought of leaving never occurred in my mind. It doesn't say what his name became.
I suspect it's Loknath,
Oh, really?
because the reason for my suspicion is that village of Aravade was referred to. And that's his town where he built the temple 2 years ago.
Hmm.
That word somehow I suspect it must be.
Hmm. You looking ahead? Is it looking up? Okay. To provide flowers for the deities, Srila Prabhupada wanted us to cultivate a garden. He wrote me, you can have the gardeners decorate the whole land with flowers, and if possible, some fruits also. Have a boundary fence so that everyone cannot enter it. And after a week later, he added that he wanted Narayan to take charge of the gardening. Quote, sometimes he may be difficult to live with, he acknowledged, but good manager means he is able to satisfy everyone and live in cooperative manner with all the devotees. So, if you manage things nicely, he can do tremendous work. Practically no one has more energy than Vishwakarma, the, um, the demigod architect and master builder, after whom he had nicknamed Narayan. He's a very difficult person to deal with. When I wrote Prabhupada that the, quote, Rose King of India had offered us 1 1,000 rose plants for free. He replied, utilize them nicely. There will be flowers for the deities. It will be a great service. Naranarayan engaged up to a dozen laborers daily and directed them in laying beds of manure and red soil and planting rose bushes, champak, jasmine, a kadamba tree, and various other flowers. He and Dravida planted a small forest of tulsi. This isn't Dravida, the BBT person, because he always did intellectual stuff. I don't think he ever did this stuff. I'll ask him. And winding from shrub to shrub was an inlaid brick pathway with benches on which devotees could sit and chant japa. I later reported to Prabhupada that Narnarayan had planted bushes, creepers, and flowers in a wonderfully attractive array of flower beds, bushes, and paths. In addition, he put up fence posts all around the garden, cleared wild brush from various places, and put up necessary walls and fences. Again, Prabhupada instructed me, please give him all facility so he can make a good garden on all the vacant land on our property. In time, however, the difficulty in dealing with Narnarayan led to conflict. I was in the hut one day with Jagat Purush and Raghunath when Narnarayan approached me for funds to make purchases for the garden. The temple was financially strapped, I told him, and there weren't funds available at that time. But Narnarayan would not accept my response. Prabhupada had personally given him the service of creating a beautiful garden, he argued, and needed money to carry out the service. He became angry and accused me of obstructing him from carrying out his service to Prabhupada. I tried to explain that there was nothing I could do until funds were available. But while my peaceful demeanor lessened the chance of Narayan becoming physically violent, it also increased his frustration. His anger, spinning out of control, turned into rage. He seemed like he wanted to rip me apart, and he reared back and spat on my face. In response, I simply wiped myself off and started chanting the Maha Mantra as loudly as I could. Narayana's not an easy guy to get along. Raghunath, who was of a humble, and sensitive nature, was so shocked to see this kind of hostile, aggressive behavior from a devotee that he fainted to the floor. At which point, Jagat Purush and I rushed over to revive and pacify him. Narayana was still fuming, but the tension in the room had eased, the atmosphere transformed by our concern for an innocent witness, and I bore no grudge against him. I knew that he was intent on his service to Srila Prabhupada and that he was very dear to Prabhupada, and Prabhupada was dear to him. There's always challenges in devotional service, isn't it? I just had an hour and 20-minute discussion with a disciple in China who is leading their training and education program based upon us. From the first day that we had some exchange, I suggested that would be a nice service for her, and she's taken it to heart since then. She's Lita Saki. Have you ever had her interaction with her? Yeah. You've heard her name. Amazing. So, one of in the course of this 1 hour and 20-minute, because what's going on in China right now? You know what's going on in China right now? You know what's going on. They passed in Hong Kong too. They passed something like a 36-page set of restrictions on religions, detailing what you can't do, specific to internet. And they didn't exactly say what the consequences were, but really, very clearly black and white delineated what you cannot do. And then I didn't know that there's two more that came after that. She told me, this is just before coming down here. This is to break up the reading. But one of her realizations, so she's in the midst of this, she's a single lady, and just fixed on some instruction given to her, 8 years ago that she's been fulfilling since then. And now this government thing. And she's not, she's very courageous. She's undaunted. She has some idea of how to move forward, etc., etc. And she then her realizations are, in the course of my service of training and education and learning more and more about our previous acharyas and how they also had to undergo enormous challenges with so many things, 6 Goswamis and the government and so on and so on and so on and so on. But having to move deities and but they were unmoved. So she's like taking strength from that. And Giriraj Maharaj, I mean, what the devotees had to undergo is quite amazing. The Life Membership Program was one of Prabhupada's most important programs in India and served as a means to distribute his books and engage leading people in devotional service. The first appeal was designed and printed by Shama Sundar. It featured a photo of Prabhupada's face superimposed on a picture of the globe and expressed the mood and intention of the program. Become a member of Srila Prabhupada's worldwide family. Our homes are your homes. When Prabhupada first introduced life membership, Tamal Krishna pointed out to him that the value of the books we gave the members would eventually exceed 1,111 rupees members were committing to pay. Prabhupada replied, the devotees will keep going back to them, and in their lifetimes they will give 5 or 10 times more than the membership subscription. Unquote. We would continue to make new members, he said, and thus we would always keep ahead. He had devised the program as a way to distribute his books. If we just piled them on a prospective member's desk, he told us, the person would agree to become a member. Paragraph. Many life members went on to become our biggest supporters in India, financially and in other ways. Still, Gargamuni complained to Prabhupada that they were not making devotees in India. We were just making life members who gave their money, but not devotees who gave their lives. Prabhupada encouraged him not to feel depressed. Making someone a life member, he assured them, was practically as good as making him a devotee. Quote, this is a letter. Our business is to chant. So, the time that Indian people take to come to hear our chanting and arti and take prasad means that your preaching work is actually successful. For the time being, we should be satisfied with that. And if they become devotees, that is very nice. The only difficulty is the Indians think, well, we have to learn from the Americans. So the best thing is to somehow or other make them members and raise funds for our activities. When someone pays, it means he is converted. Somehow or other, he has to render some service. So if you can collect money from him, that means practically they are becoming our disciples. So Do not become spiritually depressed. Actually, these things are going forward very progressively there in India, and I am very much thankful to you, all my sincere disciples, especially the elder disciples and sannyasis like your good self, for assisting me in this great mission of reviving the original Krishna conscious atmosphere in India. Do not worry. In time, we shall be completely successful. The membership program was a practical application of the fourth verse of Rupa Goswami's Upadeshamrita for reciprocating with the members in exchange of love. In his purport, Prabhupada applied the verse directly to life membership. Quote, the International Society for Krishna Consciousness has been established to facilitate the 6 kinds of living exchanges between devotees. Just quoting from the book. This society was started single-handedly, but because people are coming forward and dealing with the give and take policy, the society is now expanding all over the world. We are glad that people are donating very liberally to the development of society's activities, and people are also eagerly accepting whatever humble contribution we are giving them in the shape of books and magazines dealing strictly with the subject matter of Krishna consciousness. We sometimes hold Hare Krishna festivals and invite life members and friends to participate in the meetings and feasting by accepting prasad. Although most of our members come from the higher rungs of society, they nonetheless come and take whatever little prasad we are able to offer them. Sometimes the members and supporters inquire very confidential about the methods of performing devotional service, and we try to explain this. In this way, our society is successfully spreading all over the world, and the intelligentsia in all the countries is gradually appreciating our Krishna conscious activities. The life of the Krishna conscious society is nourished by these 6 types of loving exchange among the members. Therefore, people must be given the chance to associate with the devotees of ISKCON, because simply by reciprocating in the 6 ways mentioned above, an ordinary man can fully revive his dormant Krishna consciousness. Making someone a life member was practically as good as making him a devotee. The more care and affection we gave to the life members, the more they would reciprocate and want to support our cause. And the more they engaged in devotional service, the more they enhanced their spiritual lives. The first of the 6 kinds of loving exchange is dadati, giving gifts. The greatest gift is the holy name, which at first many people were unable to accept, but we also gave them other more valuable, more tangible gifts. I would carry Mahaprasad sweets and Tulsi leaves in a silver box, and I would also bring a Krishna conscious book, cassette tape, or picture. The Back to Godhead BTG subscriptions also served to both enliven and impress our members, and Prabhupada said that the whole purpose of the magazine was to get people to chant Hare Krishna. In Bombay, he also instructed us to send a monthly newsletter to the members, informing them of developments in the movement. Quote, so they don't think we're dead, unquote. And we developed a regular local publication with news, announcements, advertisements, and our yearly audited accounts. Paragraph. Sometimes we would also give members specially selected gifts, and I tried to enlist the help of devotees in America to arrange a steady supply and to ensure that members were nicely cared for when they visited our centers abroad. As I informed Srila Prabhupada by post, I have written to Rupanuka Karandar Bhagavan and Sasrup Prabhus that they could help get donations for Indian projects, indirectly providing first-class treatment of life members who visit USA. As the grateful members will certainly express their satisfaction with our movement when they return to India. Didn't always work like that. Life members and others are or will be mad after our gramophone records and art posters. So if they could be sent free, like the books, the members will be enthusiastic to give more by donations, and we can make money also on direct door-to-door sales. So I've written to Jayatirtha Prabhu in LA to send posters, and if you confirm that a quantity of them be sent here, I'm sure they'll be useful for selling. Similarly, the Life members love our Radha Krishna postage stamps, and they hope they could be sent also. Paragraph. The entire basis of our relationship with the donors was our encouraging them in Krishna consciousness. If we had had any other motive, they would have perceived our duplicity, and the sublime quality of our relationship would have been spoiled. Paragraph. The next exchange is pratigranati, accepting gifts. When I engaged in dadati, gift giving, I tried not to be too anxious about pratigranati, accepting gifts in return. I was convinced that if we help people advance spiritually, Krishna would be pleased, and that if Krishna was to be pleased, others would also be pleased, and our mission would be successful. Pratigranati would follow automatically when the relationship was sufficiently developed, along with the other 5 principles of loving exchange. As a rule, after giving someone a gift, I would never accept any payment or donation on the spot, even if the person offered. I asked only later when we needed substantial help for some major project, and by then, most people are already eager and glad to help. The approach worked, and I saw it work elsewhere as well. One young congregation devotee from Bombay went to rural ISKCON community in America and took over the management of the temple's guest house. When instead of charging for the rooms, he focused on caring for the guests and then asked for donations at the end of their stay, the guest house revenues went up 4-fold. The next exchange is Bhojayate, giving prasad. Prabhupada taught us to hold feasts on Sundays and other special days to make special effort to invite our friends and members. He personally organized the first Life Member Feast in Juhu and had his disciples, who were acting as hosts, perform all the services for the members whom we treated as honored guests. Later, whenever Prabhupada received special guests, he would insist that they take full prasad. Sometimes the guests protested, "We cannot take prasad in front of you, Srila Prabhupada." But he always insisted, "No, I'll be happy to see you take prasad." "If you give a man full prasad," he once said, "he'll do anything for you." In his absence, when special guests came for a feast, I would often sit and talk with them, direct the serving, and try to see that they were satisfied in every respect. The next 2 exchanges are Gulyam Akyati Prichyati, inquiring about and explaining confidential topics. While giving gifts and prasad, I always try to explain the confidential science of Krishna consciousness and give donors a solid philosophical background for further devotional service. And when the time came to engage a person in some particular service, I would present the rationale for their service on the basis of reason and philosophy and disclose the request in a straightforward manner. I would endeavor to present our philosophy intelligently without compromise, but keeping in mind the understanding of the individual whom I was addressing. From my seniors, I learned to detect prospective supporters' doubts, even without their expressing them, and then speak in such a way as to remove them. During my initial training in Bombay, I went with Madhudvisa to meet a wealthy businessman who had promised to become a life member, but when we were in the man's office, he reneged. I had expected Mother Teresa to say, "You promised to give. You can't refuse now." But instead, he just talked with the man for 20 minutes. Then, almost mystically to me, the man opened his desk drawer and wrote out his check. When I first went out on my own and approached an industrialist to become a life member, the man said, "First, I have to ask my brothers." When I reported this to Shamsundar, who had given me the industrialist's name and sent me, he told me, "That's just an excuse. You have to be intelligent enough to understand the person's doubts and address them without even bringing them up." After visiting someone many times with gifts and inviting him to Juhu for prasad, which naturally involved him or her seeing Hare Krishna land, I might feel that the time had come to engage them in some particular substantial service. Whenever I made a request, I would keep in mind Prabhupada's instructions on how ISKCON supporters could be engaged in Dadati. During one of our first meetings with life members in Bombay, he quoted Srimad Bhagavatam 10:22-35. It is the duty of every living being to perform welfare activities for the benefit of others with his life, wealth, intelligence, and words. He explained that first of all, as individual living parts and parcels of the Supreme, people had a duty to give pranayar, their life. But if someone was unable to give his life, at least he should give his wealth, because next to our life, we most valued our wealth. The combined effort of one's intelligence, words, and time produced wealth. So by giving his wealth, the person would automatically give his intelligence, words, and time in a concentrated form. And if the person gave his wealth to Krishna, we could also say that the entire effort that produced the wealth was purified and spiritualized. That's nice explanation. That's really a nice explanation. Look at later, 77. I'm planning to go to where am I planning to go to? Page 81. Okay, we're on 78. When we ask people to contribute, Prabhupada told us, some might challenge, "How can you sell God?" In reply, he said, we should quote Bhagavad Gita 9:27, Yad Karoshi, Yad Asnasi, etc. Whatever you do, whatever you eat, whatever you offer, or give away, and whatever austerities you perform, do that, O son of Kunti, as an offering to me. And if you have no wealth, Prabhupada advised that we should then say, then you can give your intelligence. You can advise the devotees. Approach such and such person. He can help. In this way, you can serve by diya, intelligence. And if you have no intelligence, then help by vacha, words. You can request whomever you meet, please chant Hare Krishna, please visit our temple. Shamsundar told me that the wealthy were accustomed to people coming to them for their money, so naturally they were on the defensive. I didn't want them to feel that way with me, and when they saw that I actually cared for them, they became more open and relaxed. With the close ones, whenever there was a death or wedding or other major event, I was always there. Once, I approached one of our friends for a large donation for Juhu, but he was hesitating. Finally, I said, so many people are coming to visit you, but who is thinking of you? They're simply thinking that of their own benefit. How can they exploit you? What can they get from you? Perhaps we are the only ones in the world who actually care for your spiritual well-being. As soon as he heard these words, he agreed, yes, I will give. When we reciprocated in these exchanges of love, with our members. Both they and we made spiritual advancement. We had only to be concerned for their spiritual well being, how somehow or other they could be engaged in service to the lotus feet of Krishna. In reciprocation for our sincerity and love, they responded. There's 2 more pages, and we've really gone a long time. I was kind of count the number of pages I had to read to finish the book while I'm here. I think I'll have to scale it down a little bit. Huh? Prabhupada once said, quote, when you speak to people, and by your speaking they are convinced that by giving to Krishna they will gain, they will volunteer some service. Later I considered that in some cases, people were seeking spiritual benefit, and in other cases, they're hoping for material blessings through their pious deeds, or both. People came to Krishna for different reasons. Although we didn't encourage the concept of getting material results for devotional service, people did sometimes come with that mentality, and we engaged them too. Prabhupada emphasized that when we went to preach or collect, we should be humble, and he often quoted Srila Prabodhananda Saraswati that celebrated taking straw between my teeth. Forget everything that you've learned, just submit yourself to Lord Chaitanya. In a conversation in Juhu, Prabhupada elaborated, you have to create faith. That is preaching. Padayor nipatya kalu shatam kritva chaham bhavani bravami. I fall down on your feet, and I'm flattering you with folded hands. Why? Why? What do you want to say? Yes, I have something to say. What is that? Say it. You are becoming so humble. Yes, I have something to say. What? Say it. Hey, Sadhava, you are a very nice sadhu, but now you please forget all nonsense. Hey, Sadhava, Sakalam Eva Vihaya Durad. Whatever nonsense you've learned, forget. Then what to do? Chaitanya Chandra Charane Kurutang Kurutanurangam. You just become a devotee of Lord Chaitanya. I'm flattering you. I'm falling down on your feet. This is preaching. If you approach people and say, everything belongs to Krishna, and I am Krishna's representative, so give everything to me. Otherwise, you're a thief, and you'll be punished, Prabhupada told us. They may become angry. What do you mean? I've worked hard for my money. It belongs to me. But if you approach them humbly and say, dear sir, I've come begging at your doorstep. Kindly give some donation for our temple. They will respond, oh, a beggar has come. Let me give him something. Some people who were averse, so averse that we had to be very tactful and induce them to engage in devotional service without their being aware that they were serving Krishna, still they would benefit. Prabhupada told the story of a young student who stubbornly refused to learn arithmetic. So instead of asking the boy what 4 plus 4 equaled, the teacher drew a picture of 2 cows and asked how many legs the 2 cows had. And through pictures and stories, she gradually taught the boys all the arithmetic processes. When a classmate of the boy told him, hey, the teacher is teaching you arithmetic, the boy replied, arithmetic? I hate arithmetic. No, I shall not learn. My task was, somehow or other, to engage people in Krishna service and help them to advance in Krishna consciousness. Yena tena pakarina mana Krishna naveshayat. At ISKCON, members and donors became part of a spiritual family, and they got the association of devotees, which was essential for their spiritual development. Unfortunately, some life members took undue advantage of our generosity, and Prabhupada, ever vigilant, made a few adjustments to the rules. The following scheme should be followed henceforth, he wrote to me from Vrindavan in 1975. We have guest rooms and devotee rooms. The guest rooms can be used by anyone who pays the fees in advance. Any life member can live in a guest room for a period not exceeding 3 days free of charge. If he wants to stay with us longer for any reason, then he may move to the devotee rooms where he must live as we do, following all devotional practices as we do. Or he would pay the fees to stay longer in a guest room. Prabhupada also saw life membership in a way of engaging his disciples. As stated in the Padma Purana and quoted in Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, the basic principle of Vaidhi Bhakti is to always remember Krishna and never forget him, quotes the verse. Prabhupada explained in his purport to the verse, Chaitanya Charitamrita, one may sell books or enlist life members or render some other service, but these duties are not ordinary duties. These duties serve as an impetus for remembering Krishna. When one goes with a Sankirtan party or sells books, he naturally remembers that he is going to sell Krishna's books. In this way, he is remembering Krishna. When one goes to enlist a life member, he talks about Krishna and thereby remembers him. Smartavya satatam Vishnu or Vishmartavya yajatachit. The conclusion is that one may act in such a way that he will always remember Krishna, and one must refrain from doing things that make him forget Krishna. These two principles form the basic background of Krishna consciousness. Last paragraph. Thus, in conjunction with chanting 16 rounds and following regular principles, going to enlist life members and speaking about Krishna consciousness was a way of remembering Krishna. 81 pages so far out of 678. How long did it take him to write this and to research what he wrote?